Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and firstly, I want to thank all of you for joining us for tonight's live Q&A for the IFC film Holler. Before we jump into the conversation, I wanted to let you know that if you do have any questions that you want to submit throughout the evening, there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen that you'll see right there, so please feel free to put any questions there throughout the evening. There's also the chat that I see some of you all saying hello to each other in, and thank you for jumping in and diving into the chat as well, so feel free to chat amongst yourselves as well throughout the discussion as well, but just make sure any questions go into that pertinent Q&A box. And it is my absolute pleasure to introduce tonight's guests. We have Nicole Riegel, who is the writer and director of the film, and Jessica Barden, who plays the lead character of Ruth.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much, first and foremost, to both of you for joining this. It's a really beautiful, beautiful film. And Nicole, I wanted to start by talking a little bit about the journey of your initial short into a feature, because tonally, there's certain parallels between the two, but it is a different story. It's different characters. And I know that there were certain opportunities to make this feature along the way, but that with collaborators who really wanted you to change the lead character and change it to a male character. And so just wanted to ask a little bit about that real need of necessity to retain that creative control and tell the story in exactly the way that you wanted to, and some of the aesthetic and tonal elements that you wanted to carry forth from the short.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having us. I think the most beautiful thing about independent film and why I do make independent films is the freedom, the creative freedom that you get. I mean, none of us are doing it, for the loads of cash. It's really love of the game. And so, all of those pressures you mentioned for me to compromise on it, it was so easy to say no, because that's the spirit of independent filmmaking, right? Is you stick to your vision and you make the film that you and the team want to make. So that was very easy to do. What wasn't easy was just getting to the yeses in the 5-year journey of making this film. And you're right, a lot of people for a few years didn't want to make the film with a female lead, and it was really hard to sit in those rooms and be told I couldn't have access to independent financing. Not a lot of independent financing. I was asking for very little independent financing, because I wanted the character to be Ruth, and you just persevere until someone says yes, and you don't know when that's going to happen. But the short, was very different, but I learned a lot on it. And short filmmaking to me has always been a place to play, even more than a feature. It's where you can go make a bunch of mistakes and nobody really cares. I don't plan on showing them to a lot of people. Like, for me personally, short form filmmaking for me is for me to it's a place of and a space of experimentation, and not for hundreds of people to see it.
And Jessica, I wanted to talk a little bit about your journey in getting this role, because after you first met Nicole and auditioned for her, you also then, looked up her email and reached out and sent her one of your previous performances, kind of knowing that she was very inspired by Andrea Arnold and saying, I think this performance shows you some of that.
I
And
can't take credit for that. My agents did it. If I could send people performances that I had done before, then I would love to do that. But I don't know how, but my agents did it.
it's a great collaboration to have people like that on your team
Yeah.
who know what to do. Did they talk to you at all about what performance they were sending and what it was that you wanted Nicole to see a little bit more of from your performance aspects?
Yeah, oh my goodness, this was so long ago now. When I first auditioned for this, it must have been 4.5 years ago. So, yeah, I'm like thinking about the types of projects that I had done. So we sent her a performance that was obviously like the English equivalent of, there's not really any similarities between the characters, because that was actually about sexual assault, which is not in this. But we sent them like the English equivalent of like, I hate this word, but like a gritty performance. I don't like that word, it makes me cringe. But yeah, we sent I'm really like, it was such a long time ago, so like I just didn't have anything else that like I really thought I was like good in. So I think that we just sent that because I was like, well, I mean, this is my best performance, I think. But it was honestly just like good agenting.
Yeah. And I want to talk about the collaboration that the two of you had in this character because, you know, you've both spoken in the release of the film how this story and this character really tap into a lot of your own personal experiences and aspects from your upbringing. And so given that you had that really kinetic connection with one another as well, how did that feed into certain aspects of this character and certain choices that you made in how you both wanted to tell her story?
I'll let Jess go first.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that obviously to begin with, we didn't have to like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know how you would approach this character if you didn't have some kind of experience in a background like this. Like, I don't know how you would come to this character if like you'd grown up in Los Angeles your entire life. Like, I imagine the conversation would have been extremely different. But I mean, from the moment that we met each other, like even without, because we met and then I did an audition, um, it just was like very apparent that there's even like the social conversations that we were having, we were two people that hadn't grown up in the industry and we had grown up outside of it. So I think it creates like a trust between the two of us. And I've experienced that with a lot of other filmmakers where, especially if you're playing a character from this background, where I don't know, like you just know that they are understanding the character and like you're not playing at it. So you just trust each other. And there's just so many conversations that you don't have to have. You can just like get to the root of the movie that you're making way quicker. But you know, of course, like it also makes it really complicated because we're both playing, you know, I'm playing a role and Nicole is directing a movie about the fact that, you know, basically you're saying that you relate to a character that doesn't really have a great start in life, which is like not always the most positive energy to like go to work with every day. But I think that for however many challenges it brought to our working relationship, and like it does when you have something in common with the character and you're playing the director, I think it gave us way more positives in the situation.
And for you, Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with her. You know, it was so important to me to find someone who's authentic for it, and authentic, I'm learning, means something different to everyone. So to me, I wanted someone who could relate to the choices someone like Ruth would make. For instance, an actor is like, well, why doesn't she just book a flight and get the hell out of here? It's like, well, she doesn't have access to the knowledge and all of the tools to book a flight. She's probably never been on a plane in her life, and she can't afford to do that. And there are all of these issues of class that every time I think an actor's making a choice, it has to be someone who understands this is a character who has a very dire financial situation and can't afford to make the choices that a lot of us could make. And in meeting with a lot of girls, that was something that became really clear to me, is who understands what money is to a lot of people in this country and all over the world. And Jessica comes from a background that is more normal than a lot of people I've met in the entertainment industry, and understands a character who has to decide between buying groceries or buying her school books or what a flight might cost. She understands those choices. She was bringing that to the film. And when Jessica said there's a lot of conversations we don't have to have, I might be misremembering this, but I don't think Jessica and I ever had to have this conversation. She just understood it and was able to sort of stop and be like, well, wait a minute, the character wouldn't do this because she wouldn't know to do this. She wouldn't have access to that. She couldn't afford to do this. It saves me a lot of time as a director to work with someone like that. So I didn't need someone who grew up in a scrapyard, per se, in America, when I say authentic, but authentic in that you come from a background that is of the world of this character, even if it's not exactly like that. And so that's what I really needed to find. And then we could build from there. But, you know, I mean, it was, yeah, in terms of bringing myself to it, I mean, it's semi-autobiographical. But I think for me as a director, the challenge was reminding myself that she relates to this character so much that her choices may not be the choices I made or would make. And I need to let her inhabit this character just as much as I am, if that makes sense, and trust those choices. And it was a really incredible experience to be walking through locations that I walked through at 17 years old, and then watching Jessica play a version of me walking through them as well, and sometimes unprompted doing little mannerisms or doing things exactly as I remember doing them, like the way she carried herself in the backpack. Like there were just certain things where I forgot I was directing a movie, and it just sort of took me back and was a little too close to home at times.
And Jessica, I also wanted to talk about your working with Wendy Overly, who is the dialogue coach that you worked with on this project. And I believe you'd also worked with her on some previous projects as well.
Yeah.
And was interested in kind of the way that you would work with her, and whether it was about going through the specific lines of dialogue from the script, or whether it was about, you know, different exercises that were really just helping with figuring out those very, very specific intonations. Because I know you talked about how some of the vowel sounds kind of almost feel like they're on the verge of tipping over into Southern. So you have to really find that fine line and balance.
I honestly didn't know what an Ohio accent was. And like now I'm like Ohio's #1 fan. I think it's like a great place. I would love to go back there. I was, you know, because of COVID, we couldn't go back there to do the premiere, but I was like, I miss this place. And when Nicole was posting the pictures on Instagram, I was like, I miss my home. I want to go back. So now, you know, I think Ohio's great. I would work in Chillicothe, Ohio any day of the week. So the really cool thing about this movie is that like everybody in it that you don't recognize is a real Ohio person. You know, they really are from the town that we filmed in. So I'm really sorry, like there's a leaf blower outside my house. Like it's gonna be so loud. So that was this is going to be the worst that it's ever going to be because it's by the front door.
It's all good.
So having real people from Ohio like made it better because Nicole and the casting director would basically just go and audition, like interview people in the local restaurants and be like, hey, do you want to be in a movie? And then they would send those tapes to Wendy. And then me and Wendy would listen to the tapes together, and I would be like, whoa, these people sound like, oh my god, you have a Ted Lasso mug. Yeah. So these people would, you know, we would listen to all these tapes, which made it really good, but also it was quite daunting because I was like, oh my god, these people are just going to be like, why have you cast an English girl in this role? And I remember actually when I was doing my prep for this movie, I was doing a Harold Pinter play, which is like insane. There's nothing in common with making a movie in Ohio about it. So I would just like do this very English play that like honestly I didn't really enjoy. Don't know a lot of actresses that enjoy Harold Pinter plays. And then I would like go home and listen to these people from Ohio with Wendy. I mean, we were just lucky because we were filming in a place that was completely unaffected by what we were doing. Like they didn't know, like we weren't exploiting them. They didn't think that we were exploiting them. I don't know, like they weren't used to a movie being there. So they were like genuinely excited and really open and so happy to be a part of it. And I think that really helped all of the accent stuff. You know, nobody was rude, nobody questioned why I wasn't American. And, you know, it really was just like the people in the town that helped it, as well as Wendy. But Wendy couldn't come to set because the movie was poor. We couldn't afford to bring Wendy to set, but, you know, it's just
we were very authentic.
The dialect coach wasn't allowed on set because the movie was poor. But, you know, spoke to her every day. Wendy isn't here anymore. Wendy passed away.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's so talented. She worked on some amazing movies, and Holler was her final movie.
Wow. That's really special, especially when you look at the entire breadth of her career and everything that she's done in the industry.
I know, she's an icon. Like, she made like every single Ben Affleck movie, basically, because she lived in Boston. Like, all Mark Wahlberg and Ben Affleck movies, and then Holler. You know, what a legend.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. And Jessica's doing a regionally specific accent in that movie. If you listen to Ohio residents in Akron, they have very hard A's, or Clevelanders. It's very different in the north, and she's doing a southeast accent. It's very scattered. Not everyone sounds exactly like that, but she's doing a very specific southeast dialect of this tiny town. And I told her and Wendy at the time they didn't have to do that. I just wanted a standard kind of American accent, that I would love it, but it might be too impossible to do. But it wasn't impossible at all. She completely nailed it.
Yeah. Nicole, I also wanted to talk about a lot of your camera choices, and in particular the fact that it was hugely important to you to shoot on film, particularly for the nighttime scenes, because you didn't want that digital aspect where you see the exact detailing of everything in the background, because there's as much power in bringing us in on a shot and really showing us every corner of the frame as there is in really utilizing shadows and light in a lot of those moments. And so once you knew that you were going to be able to do that on film, how did that influence a lot of the camera setups and particularly lighting choices that you wanted to utilize to tell the story?
Well, I made the film in 18 days in a blizzard, and with a very large cast of non-professional actors blended with a few seasoned actors like Jess. And so time was of the essence, and film, doesn't give you a lot of time, but I knew all of this going in. This was not a surprise. This is what it was always going to be. But for the camera, just everything had to be storyboarded. Like, the film was storyboarded a year before it was shot. Everything with camera was planned a year or more in advance while I was trying to get this movie financed. Because the point was to show up to set, and camera wise, everything is always just ready to go, and the film like the back of your hand. And I didn't want to mix film and digital for the reasons you just laid out. I think when it's dark, it's dark. It's a film told from Ruth's point of view and should be experiential, and we should always be in her eye line, her eyesight, we should be at her height. We should be seeing things through the lens of this young woman and experiencing the world in the way she experiences the world. And if it's dark, and she can't see anything. And if it's disorienting, then the viewer needs to feel that disorientation. And we did put in post some windows on things to lift it a little bit, to get detailing on her face when she's under the desk, and we just stay on her face. And that scene was very influenced by Kelly Reichardt's film Wendy and Lucy. There's that scene in the woods when the robber comes by, and Michelle Williams, and the camera just stays on her face. And I love that. That's indie low budget filmmaking at its finest. That's a filmmaker knowing, I don't have the money to show you this big action chase scene, but what might be really original and cool is to just stay on the sheer terror of her face. And if you have an extraordinary actor like Jessica, she will give you all of that in one shot on her face, and you don't need to do all of the fancy camera work of all of these different setups and points of views and things like that.
Yeah. And Jessica, did you find, off the back of that, did you find that from a performance approach and style that it was very much kind of working instinctively versus necessarily spending as much time having conversations and finessing scenes, because you've got the intimacy of the camera, everything that you were talking about in terms of your connectivity to the character, and then the fact that you are also working alongside a lot of non-actors as well, so there's a different style and approach there.
I mean, there's just no time to talk about things. Even if you're like making a show that has loads of money, there's never really any time to talk about anything. I think that, actors and directors don't really get enough credit for that. Like, there's very rarely a job that you're going to do unless you're working with a filmmaker. I don't know, like, unless you're working with like Clint Eastwood or something, where he's like, yo, like, that's all we're going to do, guys. Like, we're just going to talk about it for 6 hours and we're just going to film it once. Is he the guy that does that? Yeah, it is him.
I think so, yeah.
There's some directors that are like, we're only going to do this 3 times, but the rest of us are just, I don't know, like you are basically just like making it up as you go along. And like, there's not a lot of time to talk about things, especially on a movie like Holler, because we didn't know what was going to happen, because it's just like crazy. We were just like in the middle of nowhere. But I don't know if it's because like I've always really made low budget movies. I think it's probably a combination of like I always make things that don't have a lot of money, so I'm used to working like that. So therefore, I'm not like shocked by it. But I think that also I don't mind it. Like I kind of like being put on the spot. Not really into rehearsals when I'm filming. I do just love like making it up as I go along. But also we had a really great script, so everybody knew what movie they were making, and because of how everything was set up, it was a very immersive experience, intentionally or intentionally. We were in real places where Nicole didn't have to like imagine this in a place. It was where all of this happened, it's like very immersive filming experience. But of course, like, I remember just the scene that Nicole was just talking about, when we're going and filming the scene and you're like, whoa, this is like this huge sequence where somebody gets shot and I nearly get shot. You have this, you think that the day is going to be like really crazy and manic and there's going to be stunts. And then when you get there, it just like wasn't, it was just on my face. I was like, what? And, you have to be really brave as a director to do that, because you always kind of question that on the day. You're like, is this enough? Like, how really? And the director's always like, yeah, trust me. So, Nicole had to be really brave to do that. It does seem insane, when that's like the pinnacle of the movie. But I don't know, Nicole's really strong and she knew how she wanted to make it. So I don't just want to blame it on like it was filmed on film, or there was no money, or the weather was crazy. It was the way that Nicole wanted to make a movie.
Yeah.
No, I think it works really fantastically as a stylistic approach and feels very intentional in the way that the story's told with such intimacy. And to that point, Nicole, with what Jessica's describing about that scene where there is rising tension and you do have a character getting shot, but yet the camera's still just on her face in a lot of those moments. Even when you were writing the script for this, was there always an intention that even when you have those moments where you're heightening the tension and heightening the suspense, that it still just always comes back to that central grounding of what's this internally meaning to a character and what's the journey that they're processing from the external experience around them?
Yes, because it's not a film that's about that event. It's about how Ruth is processing that event. It's about Ruth experiencing that event is more important than the event to me as a director. And I find great drama in staying on her face rather than showing you a bunch of a crew of boys and women running around and a gun going off and a fight and the way a traditional action scene would be cut together. That is something that could be exceptional with another director. They could do that. But I, as a director, I am fascinated with keeping that camera on her face, just putting the camera on the ground and filming her. And I am absolutely sure lots of people thought I was crazy for doing that. But that's something that was storyboarded. I have it here in my office somewhere, a big, thick notebook of all of my storyboards. And I remember the frame looking exactly like that. And I think my job as a director, for the way I like to make a film, is to create environment and an immersive, if you will, atmosphere, but to create environment and let the magic happen in there, to let those actors loose and let them react to the environment that I've put them in. But I think if I don't set the environment up right, like if we go to film in a film that's about a harsh winter and they are warm and they're just chilling and getting a suntan and having, and super relaxed, I failed as a director. I have not created environment for them to work and make choices in.
Yeah. And kind of with that idea of immersion and with the fact that you were filming this in locations that you grew up around as well, and you were filming it within your own home community. For both of you, I was interested in how you approached filming a lot of the scenes within the location of the scrapyard, because that was a space that you were already familiar with. Nicole, I know, Jessica, you spent a little bit of time there before filming started to just kind of get that familiarity and that intrinsic sense of the space. But then also there's safety logistics that come in with literally going through some of the cans and making sure that the's nothing dangerous before you start shooting a scene.
I found a needle.
Yeah, Jessica knows something. I think I was far more concerned about Jessica's safety than Jessica was. She's more than willing to do, this is my favorite thing. This is sort of catnip for me as a director, is an actor being willingness to just let me put you in water and you'll float, or put you in a scrapyard. Hey, go work a day in the scrapyard, and you say yes. We can debate how a scene plays out and dialogue and all of that's fine. But the willingness to pick up power tools, to be in the cold, to do all of those things, no one was more willing to do that than Jessica Barden. And that is just catnip. To me, it sounds like anyone would do that. I swear to you, they will not do that. That is a needle in the haystack. If you find an actor who will just sort of let you do those things, I think it's why Kelly Reichardt's worked with Michelle Williams for so long. She's the kind of actor she likes that working environment sometimes. This film would have been so different. It would have been really bad if Jessica Barden wasn't willing to do those things. And
I would always rather make a movie like this. I would rather make a movie like this than, I don't know, because I've never, I have, but I have made movies where you're just on a sound stage, but it wasn't this type of role. But I can't imagine if we had to fake all of this and it wasn't real or something. I loved it. It's great. I got to learn something that I'd never done before. And I just remember that, also these are just normal people. So they don't know about insurance. They don't know about SAG. So, they weren't handling.
They're all in SAG now.
Oh yeah, because they've been in a movie. They, weren't looking at us like we were actors, because people can be way too precious with actors, and that's just not good when you're supposed to be playing characters like we were playing. No one was bothered if, I don't know, it just was real. They just treated us like we were real people that were going to work there. Everybody was really embarrassed when I found the needle, and I was like, come on guys, I wasn't born yesterday. I knew I was going to find a needle in one of these cans. They were like, oh, we went through everything and we thought that we found them. I was like, no way, what? I just said I'm Ohio's #1 fan, but I was like, I've been here 5 days now. I know what's inside of this trash. It's all good. Yeah, I never felt, I don't know, but I also just have this thing where when you're filming, it's not really real life, so you don't really think about the consequences of it. But obviously I knew that Nicole wasn't crazy. She wasn't just gonna let us die in the middle of filming. That would be crazy. The producers were legit. I'd seen Blue Valentine and Place Beyond the Pines. It was fine. I knew I wasn't gonna die.
Yeah. But every time she had a power tool or sparks were flying, there's a scene where we're in the scrapyard, and I wanted the camera to be really frenetic and the whole scene to have a really frenetic energy to it. And I wanted the camera as close as possible to her face.
Oh, I was kind of afraid of the sparks.
Yeah,
I was afraid of the sparks.
Yeah, usually I'm much further away from where we're filming, but I was right at camera when we were filming that, ready in case I needed to pull her out of the way or do something. But I remember projecting to everyone, it's going to be fine. But on the inside, I was like, oh God, don't let her die. Like, don't let her die. I can't get her killed. Maybe I shouldn't have shared that.
Everybody made it out on the other side.
That was a really scary moment.
I wanted to jump to a couple of the audience questions that we have. And this one is from Joe Oliver. And I feel like it's very fitting because, Nicole, you're sitting literally right in front of the poster with that very iconic red hat look. So Joe's asking, was there a significance to Ruth always wearing her red hat, or was it just cold? And was the casting and choosing of the hat a big process? Because you've really captured these costumes that feel very weathered, feel very worn, and feel like these are the fabrics that these characters wear every single day.
Yes. Well, shout out to Sierra Whaley, our beautiful costume designer. Yeah, it was very intentional. Every single thing in this film was very, very intentional. The colors, I mean, there were huge color boards and color schemes that I did with our production designer and costume designer for a very long period of time. We tried so many shades of red and blue, and until we landed on this shade of red. It may have been like the 17th color of red. We just spent 6 hours in a room finding the right shade of red. A lot of sleep lost over red. But I wanted to wear that because it is a color of passion, and I wanted her to stand out. I wanted to tell story through color. I think as a director, you should be telling story. At least I think. I don't know that let me go back. I don't know that every director has to do it. To me, as a director, it's important to tell story with every single thing, and color should be telling story in it. And I just think she looks kind of like a little revolutionary in it. And it's her color, and it signifies her passion as a character. I think she's a very passionate woman. And in the end, I don't even know if people notice this or not, but there is that transference of color when she starts placing it in different places towards the end of the film, and then hands it over to her brother. And in the final shot of the film, when she's wearing blue, Blaze's color, it's the only time we see her wearing that, when she's driving away with his. And I wanted that brother and sister to sort of exchange their colors in that moment.
Yeah. And Jessica, we have a question for you about how do you feel that you evolved as an actor from the experience of working on this film and working with Nicole?
I mean, so much. I mean, it was a long time ago, so obviously I do feel like I have evolved. The thing that I learned the most from making this movie was so loud.
The leaf blower comes back.
I learned about this movie is, I mean, like, honestly, like, my honest answer is, like, when we were making this, like, it felt crazy. Like, it was such a crazy experience. At times, like, it didn't even really feel like I was acting, because I just truly was in the situation where I was like, I don't even know how to act through this situation because it's like minus 20 degrees. And you know, like all those projects that I've done where I do so much research and I feel like I know the script inside and out, and I've had so many conversations with the director, and we've done all these costume things, and there's all this preparation. And then when I watched this movie back, I was like, damn, like all you really have to do is just like not think about it, just be in the moment. And because we didn't have time to like be precious over a scene. And you just gotta go for it. And like you can be in the craziest situation, which we were often, and you can still do a good job.
Yeah. Well, I think you've both done a really, really beautiful job with this film. And I love the collaboration that the two of you had together in making this. So thank you so much for joining us for this evening and spending the time to talk so much about the behind the scenes of making it, and wishing you nothing but continued success.
Thank you.
Thank you.